Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm Larry Roberts, and this is another episode of the Readily Random Podcast.
Hey, you could be larger than life, bigger than the world.
I have an exciting guest for us. He is the host of the Unstructured podcast, and his name is Mr. Eric Hunley. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, man.
Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. We met, I believe, in the Facebook group there for podcasters, right? We're an opportunity to meet new podcasters and other podcasters and maybe even swap out some guest appearances on our shows, that sort of thing. And you and I connected, and here we are.
Yeah, right on comment threads.
Exactly, right? So, Eric, tell us more about your podcast, what got you into the podcast, and just kind of break it down for us. What was that, that moment where you went, man, this is for me?
Wow. Oddly enough, my podcast, I don't think is that dissimilar to you.
Okay.
It's unstructured. So yours is obviously more professional, I'm sure.
Oh.
But I have a wide variety of guests. So my podcast at its root is an excuse to meet cool people like you.
Boom.
And you're going to be a guest on.
Exactly. I love it.
And I like to spread it out, though, and have different people who do different things. Like I had an Ultrarunner champion, Ironman champion, who set the Leadman course record.
Oh, wow.
He was my second guest, and somebody I really admire and looked up to. I followed him on his podcast, Endurance Planet, and he helped me get through my first marathon. So I get to reach out and get a hero of mine on and be able to just talk to him.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
It's the best. I mean, I sit there and I'm listening to you on a show, for example, or somebody else on a show, or you're on somebody's show, and then now I just get to talk to you. Instead of talking to my iPhone or whatever, I'm talking to you.
Right.
So now I can ask those questions that I might be yelling out loud.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have that opportunity if you didn't have the podcast, right?
Exactly. It is I'm kind of a shy person naturally. So walking down the street, my head's down.
Right.
My earphones are in, etc. But in a job like a podcast host, I'm playing a role. So, hey, now I have the opportunity. I can talk to you, talk to whomever. And I also get to learn cool stuff. I really enjoy that. I've had a trial attorney on. I will probably have him on again through smaller episodes to talk about specific topics like the DNA testing that's going on right now. Have you heard about the Golden State Killer? How he got caught?
Yeah, he just got caught recently, right? After 30 some odd years.
Exactly. Do you know how they caught him?
I watched 2020 episode about it, but I forgot. How did they get him?
Okay, they have some more advanced DNA testing now.
That's right.
They found old evidence.
Yes.
And they were able to extract enough DNA out of it. Then they went to the public databases like 23andMe, et cetera.
Yep.
And they found like his second cousin. And they started to narrow it down. And if you think about it, it's brilliant in terms of investigation, because they say, okay, I've got these relatives. Now let's spread the tree out. Who are they related to? Who lived in the area at the time? And you start to narrow those bands down, and then boom, you've got the person.
Yeah,
and
by then he's probably forgot about it. He's like, "What? You're arresting me? Why? I don't understand."
No, I did. Yeah. Oh, I murdered all those people.
That's right. Dang it. I remember now. Oh, yeah, that one.
I guess I stopped drinking.
Yeah. And that's a great testimony to what podcasting is all about. And, I have my book that's recently been released, 1 + 1 = podcast. And I talk about how everybody can use a podcast to expand their brand awareness and also expand their footprint in their particular industry, even on the local level. And you're doing something similar, but on a more widespread level, in that you're talking to people that you literally respect and idolize. You're not looking for customers per se, but you're looking for opportunities for conversations. And the same concept there can be applied to finding customers as well. And you're opening doors that you normally wouldn't have, because if you have a podcast, you've suddenly got this air of credibility about you, even if you really don't know what you're doing. And
don't tell. Okay, we'll cut that out. That'll be edited out later.
I don't edit anything usually, and it is what it is. So, but I like that. I like the opportunity that you presented, and you put forth for yourself by just launching a podcast and being somebody that you want to be that you're normally not quite like during the day. And people that are super shy with their own businesses can do the same thing.
Absolutely. Now, I won't say that it's an instant thing.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
I've wanted to do a podcast since I started listening to podcasts back in, when did Apple include them? 2006?
Well, Apple started including them around 2006. One of the first quote-unquote podcasts launched in about 2004, 2005. It started kind of picking up a little bit of steam. And then 2006, it started getting more widespread.
Well, that's when I got in. I had an iPod. I listened to podcasts back in the iPod days.
Wow.
Thus the name,
yeah,
as we all know.
You know, it's funny. I go, oh, wow, that's amazing. You listen to podcasts on an iPod. That's wild. You know, 'cause I don't even think I had an iPod and listened to podcasts. Pretty sure, because I've only been podcasting now for about 3 years. And, you know, it's a relatively new medium. I'd heard about it. And, of course, probably the first podcast that I ever listened to was the Joe Rogan podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience.
Sure.
And that's I got led to that simply because I'm a huge UFC fan. I've never missed a UFC in my entire life, Ultimate Fighting Championship. I've been to several, backstage at several, know several of the older school fighters back in the day, was cage side for some of the classics.
Wow.
And Joe was, you know, the announcer there. So I thought, well, I'll give his podcast a try. And it's got some UFC type stuff or mixed martial arts stuff on there, but it's such a broad spectrum of the guests that he has. And that's what inspired me. I was like, oh my gosh, I can talk just like you. I can talk to all these people if I have a podcast. And that kind of led me down the Readily Random path. And the name Readily Random probably goes back closer to the 2005, 2006 era because I had it as a blog on MySpace. So that is, you know, that stretches quite a ways.
So which is more ancient, a pod? iPod or MySpace?
Or MySpace. I don't know, man. I'm not trying to compete. That's just where that's where the name came from. And honestly, that it didn't even pick up steam back then. But I just loved the name. I don't know why, but you know, I'm kind of
a cool name.
Kind of a random guy. You know, I like all kinds of stuff.
Sure. Somebody who calls theirs Unstructured could probably relate.
Probably, yes. Yeah. So what inspired you to call it Unstructured? That specific name. I know you wanted to reach out to a vast audience there, but there are a ton of names that you could have gone with.
True.
So what led you to Unstructured?
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's a great name or not.
Oh, I dig it. I think it's a great name. I love it.
Okay. What led me to it was the fact that I wanted to talk to varied people. I'm also influenced by Joe Rogan. He talks to everybody.
Sure.
All different things. I am not a celebrity, though. So it's not going to be the Eric Hunley podcast.
Exactly.
Who cares? And I wanted to have wiggle room to where I could do whatever I want. At one point, I thought maybe I'll be like This American Life, and there'll be different segments. Maybe I'll work with other people. I thought about having a co-host to begin with because I was too scared to go on my own.
Been there.
And and that was my thought. So I was like, And also there's a guy, Thaddeus Russell.
Okay.
He's a historian and writer, and he has a podcast called Unregistered.
Okay.
And his interviews on there are fantastic as well. So I think that there's a seed in the back of my mind of Unregistered and Unstructured. I do think that probably influenced me a little bit.
That's cool, you know, and I think you landed on something there that I try to convey when I'm talking about podcasting as well, is that you're not a celebrity. I'm not a celebrity. Nobody knows Larry Roberts. Nobody knows Eric Hunley. We're just average cats. We're not Joe Rogans. We don't have that exposure. We don't have that platform to just build on like he's been doing. But he's also been around since like the dawn of time as far as podcasting goes. So let's look at it from that perspective, and that a lot of folks think, man, I've got a podcast and nobody's listening. I've only had like 50 downloads this month or something along those lines. And they're looking at it as a disappointment or a failure. But let me ask you, if once a month you had the opportunity to, if you're a speaker or if you have a product or a brand, if you had that opportunity once a month to speak in front of people and you stood in front of 50 people, how would that make you feel?
Absolutely.
You think, oh my gosh, I had 50 people I was talking to. So you do that, but you do it from the comfort of either your home or your car or your studio or wherever it may be. And you're still reaching 50 people is a lot of people. And I don't think people give themselves enough credit or enough time to establish their voice in the podcasting arena.
Well, keep in mind the Dunbar number too.
Well,
No,
sure.
I'm saying okay, and you don't know. This.
No, I don't. Yeah.
I love that hedge though. That's
and you are stupid. You don't know what that is. No,
I don't think
enlighten us.
The Dunbar number was put forth by a scientist named Dunbar, and it's 150 for humans.
Okay.
Each species can recognize and know approximately so many others in their species. The human number is about 150. And that's people who are around you, your family, your friends, things like that. Anything beyond that, you're kind of going, whoa, you're losing touch. You're not really a friend of theirs. Now, people can move in and out. But now, so keep in mind that you're wired evolutionary wise to even have up to 150 people around you. And you may be speaking to that every single week.
Okay, I can see that. Sure.
So that's pretty amazing. And I really feel because I'm not a name, all I can do is try to be authentic and work as hard as I can to deliver a good product. And maybe I'll get 50 people. I actually get more than that. But it doesn't matter, especially if this week I have 50 and next week I have 52, then that means that most of my first 50 are still there. And I picked up a couple more.
Right.
And then that number grows over time. So I feel like the focus should really be just focus on the content, give it treat it like a business. I don't know the exact stats, but I've heard like a restaurant or any business, when you open it, you'll lose money for 2 years.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Flat out plan 2 years of, a sunken cost. Well, is this different? I mean, we're all, stats obsessed. I'm as bad as anyone. I'm always checking them.
Sure.
But I did know ahead of time, don't even really think about anything for at least a year.
Right.
Get a year in.
Right.
And plus I'll suck for a year and maybe I'll be better.
I'll find my
learning.
voice. It takes a long time to find your voice, honestly. And even Readily Random is still developing its voice. If you go back and you listen to episode 1, I don't know, probably 1 through 7 or so, I have a very structured format. I actually have an interview sheet that I got from one of the top-end podcasters, one of the most quote-unquote successful podcasters out there. And he gave it away for free. So I'm like, all right, cool, thanks, appreciate that. And he actually follows it because I have listened to his show. And I'm not a consistent listener, but it's just I don't know, 10 questions that are all open-ended questions to get your guest talking to you. But it sounded so just. Hi everybody, Larry Roberts here. Welcome back. Hey, tell me about that moment you had when that light bulb came on. Ding, and then they talk, and then I have another. It's the same questions for every show. Now, granted, the guests are different, but that's just not how I am wired. I just like to talk. I just love to talk. That's what I do. And so just talking in a free, open format on a podcast is ideal for me.
No, it makes sense. I have a different approach. I kind of cyber stalk people.
Okay.
So I
That's
will.
not creepy at all.
Hey, you're coming on my show next, buddy. Welcome to the other side.
I better study my Facebook to see what's out there and be able to.
Now you've been on another podcast too, buddy.
So how else do you go about finding your guests and learning about them?
I will go primarily to podcasts they've appeared on, and that's for a couple reasons. One, to get to know them, but two, to get to know what they keep saying over and over.
Right.
And then I work at trying to find new ground to mine. Like a good example is I had a guest on, Adam Hansen.
Okay.
Great guy, innovation expert. He has a book called Outsmart Your Instincts.
Okay. He's
been on probably 20 podcasts now within the past couple months or whatever. And they're the same thing. Okay, chapter 1 of the book is this and this is it. And I was like, okay. I asked him about everything except his book.
Okay.
Because I wanted to know Adam Hansen. I wanted to know what an innovation expert is. What is that about? What drives you? How did you grow up? How is your, being a Mormon and everything? How did that influence you or shape you? And that's really, I'm trying to get to the person
Right.
as much as I can. Now, sometimes I swing out and I want to know about the job, or I might just want to, get my questions answered. And it depends on the guest and the intimacy that I feel, because I'm going to judge with it. And I hope for rabbit holes while I'm going. So as soon as we can get sidetracked, I'm happy. I'll go down those tracks. It's a hybrid approach, I guess. So I might have 25 questions all completely written out that I can go to,
Sure.
but my biggest mistake, and this happened really early with my hero, was I was stuck on my outline and I was trying to be cool with him. My goal as an interviewer, and usually I'm fairly successful, I think, is it's never about me. It's always the guest. And any way I can pull anything out about them, be it supportive, be it anything, I might challenge them a little bit. It depends. I'm not going to let somebody just say something that sounds completely crazy to me and go with it.
Right.
If you take this pill twice a day, you're guaranteed you're going to shed 30 pounds within 4 weeks.
Can you send me those?
Yeah, exactly. I forgot to take them myself. But yeah, you see, I'm going to immediately go, really?
Yeah.
Is that true? And they're FDA? Yeah. So
yeah. No, but they're about to be.
Right. So I'm not going to let anybody go crazy on that, but that's really my methodology. Is I try to get to know the person, and I especially listen for in the other interviews. Okay, they've answered that question a dozen times. What if I can just think a little deeper? Like, did you ever consider that maybe? Okay, I'll give you an example. The last guest I interviewed, and he's coming out actually tomorrow. He grew up, his parents, he's Czechoslovakian. His father is Czech, his mother is Slavic. So he literally is pure Czech.
Sure.
Or Slovakian. But his parents grew up behind the Iron Curtain because Czechoslovakia was part of the USSR. And when he was an adult, his mother told him, hey, I want you to travel. I want you to just take a year off from school and go travel anywhere in the world. You're working too hard. I will buy a plane ticket anywhere you want to go. So he chose Russia. And, his stock answer, which he even thought of or whatever, it was always, hey, I thought it was cool. And I got to taste vodka and I kissed my first girl and it was really neat. But I thought of, I said, why Russia? Why did you go there? And I asked him, was it perhaps because there's a shadow over your family? And he was like, yeah, you never thought of it that way or anything else. So that's the kind of thing I'll try to do, is maybe research just a little deeper, because I want to know the person.
Sure.
And usually if I can ask a question that, nobody's asked before, they haven't really thought of, then all of a sudden the guest is engaged and they're really, they're invested, they're interested. I cared enough to try to go dig and find something about them or whatever. Daniele Bolelli, I've had him on. I read his book. I read his life story.
Right.
I had just copious notes. I barely even got to a lot of them. He's an amazing guy, so multifaceted.
Yeah, definitely. And he's been on Joe Rogan. He's been on some of the other podcasts that I've appeared on with Sarge Approved. I'll give them a nice little plug. They're good longtime friends of mine as well.
Shout out to them. I want to get you guys on.
Yeah, there you go. We'll get you set up. We'll get you set up for sure. So I think that's great, man. That's phenomenal that you take that time to invest in your guests. And, I think I invest in my guests, but you take it to a much more analytical level than I personally do, which is great. That's a great thing. And, honestly, there are times where I wish I had gone in and dug a little bit deeper, because even after I do an episode and I release it, and then for some reason I go down that, as you mentioned earlier, rabbit hole, and I start digging into the guest a little bit deeper, and I was like, oh my gosh, really? Holy crap, that is so cool. Some of the guests that I've had, I've done that with. But I could definitely improve in that arena for sure. So that's really, really cool.
Some of it's time. It's hard. I mean, you have a day job.
Right,
And
right.
you got to pick and choose what you can and can't do. I totally understand that. It's like if this was your full-time gig, then you would spend a day researching.
Oh yeah,
these
definitely.
guests.
I would consolidate all my interviews to one day a week, maybe one day every 2 weeks, depending on how many I could get in on one day. And I would take the time prior to that and learn about every guest, and then just knock them out. And that way, I do have a deeper relationship with each and every one of them, but it's all consolidated into one day. And I know some people that do that, and they have a phenomenal show, and they establish phenomenal connections with their audience as well as their guests. But that's how they tend to structure it. And I got to tell you, I'm a little envious.
It's funny. I actually, if I had all the time in the world, I would not do that.
How would you go about it?
I would go about it the same way I do now, only just more frequently. But right before talking to you, I've listened to nothing but you all day.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's 5:30. That's a lot of me. My wife won't listen to me that long.
I did listen to something else, but I listened to you on Sarge approved, dug down the catalog because I like to find early episodes when, okay, you're this way, and then find something later.
Right.
So, but you're fresh. So it's like I've been talking to you, and then as soon as we start talking, well, I've been talking with you all day in a way.
Right. I hear you.
Versus if I stacked people, I would be like, I'm in Larry Roberts' mindset right now versus Daniele Bolelli's mindset next hour or somebody else. And I feel like personally, I would suffer doing that.
I can see that.
Now I might do 2 in a day or something like that, but to stacking them. And plus there's the whole factor of, holding your voice all day. I'm not a professionally trained voiceover person, as you can obviously tell.
Oh man, you sound great.
Oh, thank you.
I'll tell you, Sarge always tells me that my voice is like listening to a hug.
Yes. Yep. You are, was it Lair Bear?
Lair Bear. Let's not get too far into the Lair Bear. I would, Sarge, if you're listening, I would nix the Lair Bear if I had that opportunity. So
keep it. I think it's warm and cuddly. And it goes with a hugging voice.
I've been on there, I think, man, I hold the record for the guest on their show, I think 8 times. Is that what they were saying? Yep. So I lost count, man. But I remember when they launched, I kind of gave them some direction on the technical side of podcasting. And I even offered to send them some equipment that I have. Cause I'm the type of guy, and I've learned a lesson, and I think I say that in my book, that I've got equipment that I've never even used. But I always fall prey to I gotta have the best. I mean, I've got a Scarlett. I have a Scarlett mixer over here that's never been unboxed. It's still. I can make my YouTube unboxing video. I'd never do those, but I could if I wanted to. You know what I mean? And,
I have a Scarlett Solo next to me.
Well, see, nice, right there. So, but I'm just the kind of guy that I'll buy, and then I go, oh, I don't need that. Oh, I don't need that. Oh, I only needed this? Oh my gosh, And then my wife, of course, she gets a little frustrated as well. So,
well, you're in a weird position because you have a day job.
Yeah.
And you're in you're a corporate drone. I am too. And you're probably paid fairly well. I'm paid fairly well. And I have no kids, so I can afford to waste money sometimes.
Exactly.
Which is, it's not necessarily good, but I'm in that field where I'm like, no, I need quality equipment, down the line. So yes, I was really seriously thinking about getting a podcast and doing it. I wanted to since probably 2008. I was seriously thinking about it in 2015 and I started, 2015, whatever. And I started buying equipment.
Yeah.
So that's how I do a podcast is I buy stuff. Forget the fact that you got to actually use the tools.
Right.
Now, I did guest on some other people's podcasts back then for running. And my plan was to start a running podcast because I had lost a lot of weight. I was 283 pounds and I dropped the weight, ran my first marathon, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I was just eaten up by running,
right.
I'm listening to podcasts on running. I became a running coach and did reviews for tech equipment, running and watches, things like that. And I still do those actually for gearist.com. But
Cool.
I was going to do a running podcast and that would be smart too. All the books even say, hey, that, get a niche and do it.
Right.
But I never did. And it took me another 3 years, not only to get the nerve, but to get the desire. And what was happening is I was sort of losing interest, not in running. I still run as much as I can. Unfortunately, podcasting is cutting into that. But I didn't really want to talk about running. It's like I pretty much know most, theories around running that are out there. I'm not an expert, whatever. And I'm sure that I could learn tomorrow, but I just didn't have the desire to talk to all the guests and say, okay, so how many, you did intervals in this session, you did this and that. I was like, nah, that's not really great for me. I want to talk to these other people.
Sometimes it's difficult as well because you'll have your hobby, which I assume is running,
Sure.
or something that it's an outlet for you that you love doing. You love to run. Anybody that runs a marathon has a desire to run, and that's very impressive. So congratulations. You said your first. How many have you done?
4 marathons and 150K.
Oh my gosh. Now translate 50K to ours, not the metric system. How far is that?
A marathon's 42K. So
okay. So
just 6 more miles.
I got you. Wow. That is amazing. Because it's 27.2 miles, right, for a marathon?
26.2.
Right? 26. I was off by an extra mile there. So
no, that point two is a bitch too. You got to yell at the queen.
That's wow. Yeah, that's just something, I used to run in high school, but it's just something I never got attached to. I love other athletic endeavors, but I just can't. I think I'm too scattered to run because I'm like, oh my God, I'm just running. Where am I going? I'm just running, and I never personally got value out of it. I know a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. It's just not built for lair bear. So, but that's really cool. Bear. But where I was going with that before I got sidetracked is that I was saying that our hobbies sometimes turn into jobs. And then they suck. It's like, man, everybody goes, Larry, why don't you do a UFC podcast or a mixed martial arts podcast? Because you love it. You've loved it your whole life. You've always loved karate and all that good stuff. And I don't want to turn it into a job because then I have to do some research on fights. Then I have to do some research on the fighters. Then I have to stay on top of everything. If I don't have the latest and greatest information, I'm doing a dated podcast that nobody wants to listen to, so it instantly goes from hobby to job.
Yes.
And that's something you have to be careful of.
And you're under the gun and maybe you didn't feel like it today.
Exactly. But you still have to do it and you still have to sound just as excited.
Exactly. Whereas your hobby, you don't do it that day. You still love it.
Yeah,
you do it the next day or whatever. You do it when you want because it's fun and you look forward to doing it.
Exactly. There's that desire to do it. Whereas it's like, oh my God, I don't want to talk about fights right now. So, well, hey man, let's wrap this one up. Tell us where we can find you. Tell us a little bit more just about the podcast, where they can find the podcast, all your contact information that you would like for people to have, and we'll wrap this thing up.
Excellent. The podcast is called Unstructured. It's on every platform except for Spotify. Damn you, Spotify. They decided right after I got on that, they're going to stop accepting new podcasts for a few months.
Really?
Thank you. Yeah. And unfortunately, I had to have 5 episodes before I could be in there.
Right.
And right about that cusp point, they were like, okay, our back ends can't handle it. We weren't prepared for all these submissions. And thus I have to wait to get into Spotify.
I know when they first kicked it off, I use Libsyn as my media host, and you had to email their marketing individual,
Rob Walsh or whatever.
Yeah, Rob, exactly. Rob Walsh. I don't know who you use as your host. So
Podbean.
Okay. But yeah, you had to send an email directly to Rob, say, hey, I'd like to be on Spotify, hook a brother up or whatever it is. And it took forever. It took months for me to get on there, but I finally got it on there, and a big shout out to Rob. So I appreciate that. But I don't know where they're at right now as far as accepting new shows. You might try it again unless you've tried it recently.
I tried it. They're tied together, and Rob Walsh himself said that they shut down new submissions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
At least June.
Okay. Wow.
So
I need to listen to his podcast. I haven't listened to his podcast in a while. See, I'm not on top of things, man. But
there's just too many.
There is. That's exactly right. There are too many. If you're a podcast fanatic like I am, you can't find enough time to listen to everybody's show. Right. And even if you just have them in your library, I've probably got, 50, 60 podcasts that are in my iTunes library. Maybe more, maybe less, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. And every once in a while, I'll see, that one stopped downloading because I haven't gone back to it and listened. Not that I don't want to. I just don't have the time. So,
well, and that's kind of my angle, too, with the different guests. I understand that people are not going to listen to every episode.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this week's guest will be so cool that I'll get this range of audience, and the next week I'll get another range. And some people will listen to all of them. Awesome. But some will just say, oh, trial attorney. Okay, let me check that out. Or BBC reporter. Oh, let me check that out. And I understand that. I mean,
sure,
I have to do the same thing.
Sure. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. You are out there on Facebook. Can people find you on Facebook, Twitter, all those good places as well?
Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All three are Unstructured P as in podcast.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. Well, man, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to coming on your show next. And, man, we'll swap out these episodes, and we'll have a good time with it. So, Eric, thank you once again, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Awesome.
Thanks man. Take care.